February 2026, Washington, D.C. The United States Department of Justice releases 3 million pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, 180,000 images, 2,000 videos. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche calls it the final major release. Hours later, thousands of pages disappear from public view. The reason given: victim privacy violations. Attorneys representing Epstein's victims call it the single most egregious violation of victim privacy in one day in United States history. After nearly 7 years of investigations, trials, congressional hearings, and document dumps, this is what we're left with. Emails between Epstein and a man referred to as the Duke. Flight logs listing passengers as unidentified females. Photographs of Bill Clinton at parties. Schedules. Financial records. Redactions. And silence. The official story never changed. Epstein acted alone. There was no client list, no blackmail operation, no conspiracy. Just a banker who built a mysterious fortune while managing money for billionaire clients who probably did not exist, while also trafficking girls to and from a private island in the Caribbean, while hosting some of the world's most powerful politicians, businessmen, intellectuals, and celebrities as house guests. All of it, according to federal authorities, was an unfortunate coincidence, nothing more. But court records tell a different story. So do the emails, the flight logs, the testimony of dozens of women who were girls when they met him, the scientists who took his money, the politicians who flew on his plane, the billionaires who handed him control of their fortunes. All of them orbiting a man who should not have had any power at all. Jeffrey Epstein was a college dropout. He taught math at a prep school and got fired. He walked away from one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history without facing charges. Then somehow, he ended up managing a billionaire's entire fortune, buying islands, flying world leaders across continents, and hosting Nobel Prize winners at dinner parties where he could not hold a conversation for more than 2 minutes. Every time he failed, he was promoted. Every time he was caught, he walked away. Every institution that should have stopped him protected him instead. And when he finally did go to prison in 2008, he spent 12 hours a day outside his unlocked cell on work release. When he came back to New York, his friends threw him a birthday party for a prince. The question is not just what Epstein did, it is how. How do you control people more powerful than you? How do you build a network that spans decades, continents, industries, and survive every exposure, every investigation, every scandal, until the very end? The answer is not in the 3 million pages. It is in the pattern. A pattern that started long before the island, long before the fortune, long before the world knew his name. Because Epstein did not begin with power. He did not inherit wealth or connections. He had none of that. What he had was something else, something he learned early and perfected over 30 years. The story does not start with power. It starts with access. Manhattan. The Dalton School sits on the Upper East Side, a few blocks from Central Park. It is one of the most prestigious prep schools in America. The students are children of bankers, developers, and politicians. People who can afford tuition equal to $50,000 a year today. The kind of place where connections are inherited, not earned. Jeffrey Epstein walks through the doors as a math teacher. He is 21 years old. No college degree, no teaching credentials, just 2 years at Cooper Union, and 3 more at NYU before dropping out. His hiring is unusual, but not impossible. The headmaster at the time had a habit of taking chances on unconventional candidates. But Epstein does not act like a teacher. He wears a fur coat, gold chains, open shirts that expose his chest. Students remember him showing up at parties where minors were drinking. He is popular with some of the female students, and he does not just tolerate the attention. He encourages it. Within 2 years, he is fired, not for anything scandalous, just poor performance. He was not good at his job, but within 2 months, Epstein has a new one. He is hired at Bear Stearns, one of the largest investment banks in the world, as an assistant to a floor trader. The recommendation comes from a student's parent, someone who knew Alan Greenberg, the CEO. Greenberg had a philosophy about hiring. He liked people with what he called PSD degrees, poor, smart, and desperate to be rich. Epstein fits the description. And whether or not getting access to these parents was his goal the entire time he worked at Dalton, it does not matter. He is in. 4 years later, Epstein is promoted from junior assistant to limited partner. It is a meteoric rise for someone with no degree and no background in finance. Then, 1 year after that, he is asked to leave during a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation into insider trading at the firm. He is not charged, but he is out. The pattern starts to repeat. In the early 1980s, Epstein becomes a consultant for Towers Financial Corporation, a debt collection agency. His salary is equivalent to $69,000 a month today. But the company is not really in the business of collecting debt. It is raising $500 million from investors while promising big returns. The plan is to use that money for corporate takeovers. Buy a large stake in a struggling company, fire the executives, downsize, increase share value, then sell. It is a popular practice in the 1980s. Towers attempts a takeover of Pan American World Airways in 1987. Then, Emory Air Freight, a year later. Both attempts fail. When the takeovers collapse, so does the company. In 1993, Towers Financial implodes. It is exposed as one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history. Epstein's business partner, Stephen Hoffenberg, spends nearly 20 years in prison. During his deposition, he does not just implicate Epstein. He blames the entire operation on him. He says Epstein orchestrated the trades, met with investors, and traveled the world on the company jet. But by the time Towers collapses, Epstein is already gone. He left 3 years earlier. When investigators come looking, they never charge him. Hoffenberg's testimony is considered unreliable. Epstein's name was not on the official records. It is just hearsay. He walks away from $500 million in fraud without a single consequence. By the late 1980s, Epstein was not just aimless anymore. He had a system. Late 1980s, Columbus, Ohio. Leslie Wexner is not just wealthy. He is one of the most successful retailers in modern American history. After opening a single clothing store in a Columbus suburb in 1963, he grows his brand, The Limited, to 100 stores within 12 years. By the mid-1980s, he is purchasing failing companies and turning them into empires. Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, Bath and Body Works. If you have ever walked through a mall in North America, you have seen his work. In 1985, Wexner becomes a billionaire. But the man the public meets in interviews is not what anyone expects. He describes himself as haunted by something he calls a DYBBUK, a demon in Yiddish. He says it has been with him since childhood. His father called it churning. Wexner tells a reporter that the Dybbuk makes him wander from house to house, swallowing companies larger than his own, accumulating more and more with no end in sight. He calls it an integral part of his genius. People who know him say he is impossible to understand. He cuts off longtime friends without explanation. He buys every property surrounding his mansion in Ohio, so no one can be near him. He builds an estate modeled after an English manor, complete with secret passageways and interior surveillance. Colleagues say he micromanages every detail of his stores, from the fabric and the clothing to the layout of the displays. They also say it does not seem like he enjoys being wealthy. He just craves control. This is the man who becomes Jeffrey Epstein's first client. Starting in the late 1980s, Wexner hands Epstein nearly complete control over his personal fortune. Friends and business associates are mystified. Why would a renowned businessman in the prime of his career place this much trust in an outsider with a thin resume and almost no financial experience? No one has an answer. But the arrangement works, at least on paper. Epstein moves to Columbus. He launches his own firm, Epstein and Company, with a strict policy. He will only take clients worth over $1 billion. Wexner is client number one. Then comes Leon Black, co-founder of Apollo Global Management. Black eventually pays Epstein $158 million for tax and estate planning services. Together, Wexner and Black contribute more than 75% of Epstein's total fee income. By the early 1990s, Epstein is flying around the world in a private jetliner. He is acquiring properties, a mansion in Manhattan, a ranch in New Mexico, an island in the Caribbean. But his name never appears in Forbes. He has no public filings, no client list, no office that anyone can point to. To outsiders, it looks like he owns the world. To people who ask questions, the answers do not add up. Over the years, multiple journalists and business partners recall Epstein suggesting he worked for an intelligence agency. He never says which one. But he does business with Adnan Khashoggi, a Saudi arms dealer with ties to the CIA and Mossad during the Iran-Contra affair. He is later found with a fake Austrian passport bearing stamps from the Middle East. At his death, Epstein is worth nearly $600 million. Where it came from, no one can say for certain. Wealth bought him access, but access was not enough. Early 1990s, Manhattan. Ghislaine Maxwell arrives in New York after her father's empire collapses. Robert Maxwell was a Holocaust survivor, a decorated war hero, a member of the British Parliament, and the owner of newspapers and television networks across Europe. He was also linked to Israeli intelligence, British MI6, and the Russian KGB. In November 1991, he falls off the side of his yacht in the Canary Islands and drowns. Days later, investigators discover he had stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from employee pension funds to keep his lifestyle afloat. His funeral in Israel is attended by the Prime Minister, the President, and every current and former head of Israeli intelligence. His daughter, Ghislaine, had been a socialite in London and New York for years. After her father's death, she stays in Manhattan. Sometime in the early 1990s, she begins dating Jeffrey Epstein. She becomes the bridge. Prince Andrew, Saudi royals, politicians, celebrities, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. The people Epstein could not reach on his own, Maxwell introduces him to. And in return, Epstein gives her a place in a world that had just collapsed around her. In 1998, Epstein buys Little St. James, a 71-acre island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. A helipad, a private dock, a gas station, pools, multiple villas. In 2014, he purchases the island next to it, Great St. James. Flight logs later show at least 87 trips to the United Kingdom alone between the early 1990s and 2018. 15 of those flights happen after his 2008 conviction. Some passenger lists include only first names. Others list unidentified females. By the mid-2000s, Epstein rebrands. He is no longer just a mysterious financier. He becomes a patron of science. He donates tens of millions of dollars to universities, over $9 million to Harvard alone. He hosts dinners with Stephen Hawking, Nobel laureates, and theoretical physicists. He talks about genetics, artificial intelligence, and the future of humanity. But the scientists who attend these gatherings tell a different story. Some say Epstein could not focus on a subject for more than 2 minutes. He would ask questions like what is up or what is down, then lose interest. One chemist recalls that after a few minutes of conversation, Epstein would interrupt and say, "What has that got to do with pussy?" Steven Pinker, a cognitive scientist who attended some of Epstein's events, later says Epstein had no genuine interest in exploring ideas. Philosopher Daniel Dennett recalls Epstein asking manipulative questions just to show off his wealth. Another scientist describes him as someone who could not concentrate, had no attention span, and would blurt out the dumbest things. The gatherings were not about science. They were about collecting people, witnesses, endorsements, insurance. In 2003, journalist Vicky Ward begins working on a profile of Epstein for Vanity Fair. During her research, two sisters approach her. They claim Epstein sexually assaulted them in the mid-90s. One of them was under 18 at the time. They had reported it to the NYPD, and no action was taken. Ward writes their accusations into the article. Then, Epstein starts showing up at the Vanity Fair offices. He asks her not to include the women's stories. That same week, a bullet and the head of a dead cat are left on the front steps of the editor-in-chief's home. The accusations are removed from the final piece. Ward later hires security to watch over her newborn twins in the NICU. She says she was terrified of what Epstein might do. By 2005, Epstein had built something no one could see. Then, a 14-year-old girl walked into a police station. March 2005, Palm Beach, Florida. A woman contacts the Palm Beach Police Department. Her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been paid $300 to strip and massage a man named Jeff. The girl attends a boarding school for troubled teens. She had shown up with the money in her purse. Other students noticed. They gossiped. Eventually, a school police officer and a therapist interviewed her. She told them an older friend had taken her to a waterfront mansion. A 25-year-old blonde woman led her to a bedroom with a massage table. The man inside demanded she undress. Then, he assaulted her. Police show her a lineup of photographs. She identifies Jeffrey Epstein immediately. The Palm Beach Police Department spends 13 months investigating. They interview more than a dozen victims. They find hidden cameras in Epstein's home. Photographs of girls are found throughout the house. Some of the girls in the photos are the same ones they have been interviewing. They find high school report cards in the trash. There is evidence of girls recruited from Brazil, Eastern Europe, and France, possibly through a modeling agency called MC2, owned by Jean-Luc Brunel. Epstein had invested in it. In July 2006, Epstein is arrested for procuring a minor for prostitution. But the case does not go the way it should. On September 24, 2007, U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta signs a non-prosecution agreement. Epstein pleads guilty to 2 state charges, soliciting prostitution and soliciting a minor. He is sentenced to 18 months in prison. He serves 13 months. During those 13 months, he is allowed to leave the jail on work release for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. This is against county policy for sex offenders. But an exception is made. His cell is left unlocked. He has unlimited access to a television room. Guards are told not to disturb him. The non-prosecution agreement does something else. It grants immunity to named and unnamed co-conspirators. The FBI investigation that had been running parallel to the local case is halted. In November 2020, a Department of Justice internal report concludes that Acosta exercised poor judgment, but he is cleared of professional misconduct. Epstein returned to New York in 2008. He registered as a sex offender. Then he went back to his life. Almost immediately, he hosted a dinner with Woody Allen, Katie Couric, and Chelsea Handler. A few weeks later, he threw a birthday party for Prince Andrew. Theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss defended him publicly, saying he did not feel tarnished by his relationship with Epstein. He said he felt raised by it. Another friend argued that if a young woman lies about her age, it is her own fault. Publicist Peggy Siegel called Epstein brilliant and said his unique mind is what attracts the world's smartest people to his home. In 2014, Epstein made a connection with Bill Gates while seeking donors for the Gates Foundation. Gates flew on Epstein's plane to visit his Palm Beach house multiple times. Years later, Gates said the meetings were a mistake. Epstein had claimed he had relationships with people who would donate to global health, but nothing came of it, and Gates cut him off. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary, had traveled on Epstein's jet since 1998. In November 2025, after new documents were released, Summers stepped down from roles at Harvard and OpenAI. He said he felt deeply ashamed. For 10 years, the world moved on. Then the documents started coming out. July 6, 2019. Teterboro Airport, New Jersey. Federal agents arrest Jeffrey Epstein as he steps off a private plane returning from Paris. The charges are sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. 2 days later, he pleads not guilty. On July 23, 2019, guards find him semi-conscious in his cell with injuries to his neck. On August 10, 2019, at 6:30 in the morning, Jeffrey Epstein is found dead. The New York City Medical Examiner rules it a suicide. The world reacts with disbelief. Conspiracy theories flood the internet. But officially, the case is closed. On December 29, 2021, a jury convicts Ghislaine Maxwell on 5 of 6 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams calls it one of the worst crimes imaginable. Maxwell faces up to 65 years in prison. Williams says the road to justice has been far too long, but today, justice has been done. Then the files begin. January 4, 2024, a federal judge unseals documents from Virginia Giuffre's 2015 defamation lawsuit against Maxwell. Roughly 150 names appear. Some are victims. Some are witnesses. Some are associates. The media reports them as though they are all complicit. Most are not. November 2025, President Donald Trump signs the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law. It passes Congress 427-1. The law requires the Justice Department to release all Epstein-related documents within 30 days. November 12, 2025, the House Oversight Committee releases over 20,000 pages. Emails, schedules, flight records, financial transactions. Some of it is new. Most of it confirms what was already suspected. December 19, 2025, the Justice Department releases hundreds of thousands of documents. Photographs of Bill Clinton at parties. Emails between Epstein and someone referred to as the Duke, likely Prince Andrew. In one email, Epstein writes that Clinton was never ever on Little St. James Island. In another, he calls Trump's business practices dirty, but does not implicate him regarding the girls. He dismisses Virginia Giuffre's allegations as delusional. The documents are heavily redacted. Lawmakers criticize the lack of transparency. Survivors say it feels like another cover-up. January 30, 2026, the Justice Department releases 3 million pages, 180,000 images, 2,000 videos. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche calls it the final major release. February 3, 2026, millions more pages go public. Then, hours later, thousands are removed. The explanation is victim privacy violations. Attorneys call it the single most egregious violation of victim privacy in one day in United States history. September 2025, a congressional panel releases video footage from Epstein's cell block. 1 minute is missing. Lawmakers say unreleased files could shock the conscience of the country. But no one says what is still being withheld, or why. During depositions,